I woke up that morning to the smell of coffee, but it wasn't coming from the kitchen. It was coming from the bedroom, and I wasn't sure why. At first, I thought I was still dreaming, but then I saw her, my wife, sitting on the edge of the bed with her laptop open, eyes glued to the screen, fingers flying over the keys like she was racing against some invisible clock. "Morning," I said, trying to sound casual. My voice sounded foreign in the quiet room. She didn't look up. Not even a blink. I frowned and stepped closer. "Coffee smells different today." She finally looked at me, and there was a tension in her eyes I couldn't place. A flicker of guilt, or was it fear? She smiled. Just a little, and said, "Just trying something new." Then she closed the laptop abruptly and stood up, walking past me like I wasn't even there. Something about it didn't sit right. Normally, we'd joke, sip our coffee, plan the day. But that morning, the air between us felt fragile, stretched thin, ready to snap. I didn't know if I had imagined it, or if something had shifted overnight while I slept, and I couldn't shake the feeling that what I didn't see on that screen, the words she typed, the emails she read, the messages she ignored, was going to change everything. I couldn't tell if I was about to confront a secret, or if I had already walked into one. We'd been married for 6 years, and for the most part, life felt manageable. Not perfect, but steady. We had routines that fit together almost like puzzle pieces: morning coffee, walks after dinner, the occasional movie night where she'd fall asleep halfway through the film and I'd let her. I always admired her drive. She had this way of diving headfirst into projects, whether it was painting the living room or organizing a charity event at her work. It was inspiring, honestly. I liked that about her. I liked feeling like I could rely on someone so decisive, but somewhere along the way, I realized I didn't really know what was inside her head. I could guess, sure, I knew her moods, her habits, but her thoughts, her fears, those were like locked doors. She'd talk about her day in fragments, skipping over things that seemed ordinary but always felt significant in hindsight. I chalked it up to privacy, to the fact that everyone needs their space. Our friends always said we were the solid couple. People envied the way we laughed, the way we looked like we were in sync. And I believed it. I wanted to believe it. That morning, watching her at the edge of the bed, I thought back to that idea of solid. Something in me whispered that maybe solid didn't mean what I thought it did. Maybe it was fragile, like glass held together by glue. I didn't say anything, but I made a mental note. I would watch carefully, and see if this new tension was just a fleeting thing, or if it was the beginning of a shift I couldn't yet name. I spent the rest of the morning pacing the apartment, trying to shake off the unease that had settled in my chest. I kept glancing at her, pretending to read my emails, pretending to scroll through my phone, but my eyes kept drifting back. Every small gesture, how she sipped her coffee, how her fingers tapped the table, the faint line in her brow, felt like a message I couldn't decode. I remembered the night we met, how her laugh had filled the air like it belonged to a different world. I remembered how I'd been drawn to her confidence, her warmth, the way she made me feel like I could take on anything. And yet, now, I felt like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't control. Watching her drift just out of reach, I tried talking to her about trivial things, what we'd have for dinner, a funny thing that happened at work, but she responded with clipped sentences, just enough to acknowledge me, never enough to bridge the distance. I found myself replaying every conversation, every glance, trying to spot the moment where things had shifted. I even questioned myself. Had I missed signs before? Had I been too comfortable, too complacent, too willing to accept the surface of our life while ignoring the depths? My stomach twisted at the thought, and yet, beneath the anxiety, there was a fragile hope. I wanted to believe she'd tell me what was going on. That whatever secret she was holding, it wasn't about leaving me. It was something temporary, fixable. Something I could understand. If only she let me in. A few days later, I noticed the first real cracks. She started disappearing for stretches of time without telling me where she was going. At first, it was just a quick trip to the store, she said, but the clock would tick past 2 hours, then 3, and I'd find her quietly scrolling on her phone when she finally came back. No explanation, no apology, just that same half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. I tried asking casually. "Everything okay?" I'd say, leaning against the doorway. She'd nod, quick and sharp, and then change the subject. I hated that I even wanted to press, hated the way my stomach clenched whenever she shut me out. Then there were the little things, the misplaced receipts I didn't recognize. The subtle scent of a perfume I hadn't smelled in years, the way she would sometimes stare at me with a look that seemed familiar but wrong. I wanted to chalk it up to stress, maybe a side effect of the therapy she'd started a few weeks ago. But something deep in me told me it wasn't that simple. I found myself hovering around the apartment more, pretending I was busy, pretending I wasn't silently cataloging every unusual glance, every secretive smile. I told myself it was paranoia, but the quiet dread in the back of my mind refused to fade, and even when we sat across from each other at dinner, sharing the same space, the same food, I felt invisible. Like I was watching her through glass, able to see her. But not touch her, not understand her. By the second week, the distance between us felt like a living thing, pressing down on me from every corner of the apartment. She had started locking her laptop, muting notifications, even taking calls in another room. I tried to respect her privacy, I really did, but every precaution made my imagination race faster. One evening, I saw her laughing at something on her phone. Not a casual smile, a full laugh, like she'd just heard a joke only she could understand. My chest tightened. I told myself it was nothing, maybe a friend, maybe a coworker, but the seed of doubt had already taken root. Then came the note. I found it tucked between the pages of a book she'd been reading. Just a few words. Scrawled in her handwriting, "I can't keep carrying this alone." My first thought was relief, finally, she was opening up. But as I read it again, the words twisted in my mind. Carrying what? Was she stressed at work? Depressed? Or someone else? I confronted her gently. "Hey. I found this. Can we talk about it?" She froze, blinked rapidly, and for a moment, I thought she might confess everything. Then she smiled softly, shook her head, and said, "It's nothing you need to worry about." Really? Her calm should have reassured me, but instead, it made me wonder if I had been naive all along. If she could be this distant, this secretive, about something so heavy. Then what else was hidden? I wanted answers. But every question I asked seemed to drift away, unanswered, leaving me grasping at shadows, and that night, lying awake listening to the soft hum of the city outside, I realized, I was losing not just her trust, but my own sense of reality. A week later, I thought I finally had some clarity. She had been acting distant, secretive, and cold for weeks, and I couldn't take the anxiety anymore. So, I did something I swore I never would. I peeked at her messages. At first, it was just small things, a few texts from a friend asking about her therapy sessions, snippets of encouragement. But then I saw it, an entire conversation thread that made my stomach drop. She'd been talking to someone new, someone who seemed intimate. I couldn't read it all without my hands shaking. Words like "I wish I could be there for you" and "I understand better than anyone" jumped out at me, and suddenly, the picture seemed clear. I confronted her that night. "Who's he?" My voice was tight, brittle with emotion. She froze, eyes wide, lips parted. Then, slowly, she sighed. "It's not what you think," she said. But she didn't deny it. She admitted she'd been confiding in someone outside our marriage, someone she trusted to help her through therapy. She claimed it was platonic, supportive, necessary. But I couldn't shake the image of the laughter, the secrecy, the note. For a moment, I believed I had my answer. I told myself this was the cause, the distance, the tension, the half-smiles. I told myself I could accept it, manage it. Maybe therapy had opened a door she needed to step through, and I'd just been standing outside. But as the days passed, the unease didn't fade. Something still felt off. I couldn't pinpoint it, but deep down, I suspected there was more beneath the surface, something I hadn't seen, something she hadn't told me, and that suspicion, it refused to let me sleep. It wasn't until that Saturday evening, weeks after the note and the messages, that I finally understood. I had followed her out, quietly, carefully, the way you do when suspicion has become a shadow you can't shake, and ended up outside a small, dimly lit building I'd never noticed before. A community center, she said later, when I asked. Inside, I saw her sitting in a circle of strangers, speaking with a vulnerability I'd never witnessed in our apartment. People nodded, offered words of comfort, and listened to her in a way that made her entire posture shift, from tense and guarded to open and almost light. She wasn't hiding an affair, she wasn't confiding in some mysterious man. She was working through something she hadn't been able to articulate to me, her anxiety, her self-doubt, the pressures she carried silently for years. The realization hit me harder than anything I'd expected. Everything I'd assumed, the laughter, the secrecy, the note, had been misread. I had been staring at shadows, imagining betrayal where there was none. The tension, the distance, the half-smiles, they weren't weapons against me. They were her armor while she navigated a path of healing I couldn't join her on. I felt a mix of relief and shame. Relief that the threat I imagined didn't exist. Shame that I had let suspicion cloud my love for her, that I had read intentions into moments that were never meant to be coded. Never meant to hurt me, but even as I stepped into the circle to sit beside her, feeling the warmth of understanding, I realized healing isn't just a personal journey, it can be isolating, even from the people who care most. And for the first time, I saw the fragility of trust and the courage it takes to ask for help, even when it leaves the ones who love you on the outside, waiting, guessing, and sometimes, suffering quietly. The days that followed were quiet, but heavy. We didn't talk much at first, not because of anger, but because the weight of what I had imagined, versus what was real, pressed down on both of us. I caught myself watching her, searching for signs of the old secrecy, half expecting shadows where there were none. She didn't mind, or at least she didn't show it. She carried on with her therapy sessions, came home with small smiles, and tried to bridge the space between us. But I realized healing isn't neat. It doesn't come with a timetable, and it doesn't erase the echoes of the distance that grew while someone was struggling in silence. I felt guilt for doubting her, guilt for letting suspicion consume my thoughts. And yet, there was something I couldn't shake, a lingering unease. Even knowing the truth, I had glimpsed the fragility of our connection. I had learned how easily assumptions could twist reality, and how quickly love could be clouded by fear. We tried to move forward, slowly, carefully. Dinner conversations returned, laughter crept back into our living room, but I could feel the quiet lessons settling between us. She had grown in ways I hadn't been able to witness fully, and I had grown too, but differently. I had learned how much space someone might need to heal, and how painful it can be to be left outside that process, even when your intentions are pure. I wanted to ask her if she regretted keeping parts of herself from me. But the words felt wrong. I realized some questions don't have simple answers, and some journeys can only be walked alone, no matter how much love waits at the door. Weeks later, life settled into a fragile rhythm. She smiled more easily, her laughter returned to the apartment, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling of distance. Not because she was hiding anything, but because I had seen how easy it was to misread her world. How easy it was for me to let doubt grow into a shadow I couldn't shake. I found myself hesitating before asking questions, weighing every word. I wanted to support her, to be there fully, but part of me wondered if asking too much would push her back into that circle where I wasn't allowed, where I could only watch from the outside. I realized that sometimes love isn't about closeness, it's about patience, and about letting someone carry burdens alone. Even if it hurts you, some nights, I stare at her sleeping and wonder, did she truly need to go through all of this without me? Was there a part of our life together that I had no right to? And if I had approached it differently, more understanding, less suspicion, would the distance have ever formed at all? I don't have answers. I only have questions. Questions about trust, about boundaries, about the fragile line between support and intrusion. I can see now that healing is not linear, and love is not simple, and sometimes, I lie awake thinking, if someone you love needs to carry a part of themselves alone, is it love to wait outside the door, or is it complicity in isolation?